Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Oh, and howdy, everybody. I hope you are ready for this because today we are talking about building a robust governance, risk, and compliance framework. We're talking about challenges and solutions. Perhaps you're here to discover innovative solutions for risk assessment and mitigation, or maybe you're looking to learn about some best practices for managing your governance policies, or maybe you're looking to gain insights on how to plan out your GRC strategy. Now, those are a lot of challenges ahead of you, but there's always that idea that you shouldn't simply say no or bring up a complaint without also having an alternative or providing an idea of how to solve the problem. I firmly believe in this, and today we are discussing both the challenges, but of course, focusing on the solutions. And here to help provide us with plenty of solutions, the awesome folks at Informatica, Keeper, Rubrik, and Okta have sent some of their top experts to help us navigate this conversation and share the best strategies to build a robust governance, risk, and compliance framework and make your implementation of these solutions quick and seamless. This is going to be a great day, and I can't wait to get started. So let's dive in. Now, my name is Mackenzie Puddesy. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. And if this is your first webcast with me, welcome, 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 and nice to meet you. I also have my fellow moderators here, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward here for live chat today. Now, not only do we have a ton of exciting and useful information for you, but we also have some prizes in store. Today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards. And as mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about that. There's also a best question prize, a $50 Amazon gift card for each session. So make sure you ask plenty of thoughtful questions as each presentation goes forward. And we've got live Q&A with the presenters so that you can have your questions asked. Now, if you haven't found the questions tab already, why don't you go say hello, bonjour, hola, aloha, or whatever greeting you like in there to say hello to everyone else here and get this awesome community lit up and ready for the day. And hey, with that last little thing, I think we're pretty much ready to rock. Today, I've got Joey D'Antoni. He is a principal consultant, and he is going to be kicking off our EcoCast with a topical keynote, and we'll be setting the stage for the presentations that follow. So with that, I'm going to kick things over to Joey, and let's get the good times rolling. Take it away, Joey.
Thanks for the introduction, and welcome to Building a Robust Governance, Risk, and Compliance Framework, Challenges and Solutions. I'm Joey D'Antoni, and I'm Principal Consultant at Denny Associates Consulting. One of the biggest challenges faced by businesses, not just IT organizations, is understanding data governance, managing risks, and staying within compliance frameworks. I've got a lot of experience in both the pharmaceutical and financial services industries, and I know that in both of those industries, along with many others, not just technology is your problem. You're also having to deal with compliance, which means dealing with government agencies, dealing with QA people, and dealing with compliance folks in your own organization who might not have the best understanding of your technology. Beyond that, we have major security concerns, no matter what industry you're in, due to the kind of ever-present threats of ransomware and various other attackers. So in this session, we're going to just kind of talk a little bit about how you can build a data governance framework to help develop those competencies in your organization, improve your risk tolerance, and just let you better focus on the systems that need the highest levels of care. I always like to kind of start my talks with definitions so everybody can understand where we are on the same terms. And technology plays a really significant role in data, but at the end of the day, data governance is something that needs to come down to the organization, because it's the behavior of the people who are using the technology that helps determine whether the data that you're using is going to help drive your business success. And the National Institutes of Standards and Technology in the United States is kind of my go-to for definitions related to technology solutions. They tend to do a really good job of defining things. And their definition of data governance, and I'll just read this to you, is a set of processes that ensures that data assets are formally managed throughout the enterprise. A data governance model establishes authority and management and decision-making parameters related to the data produced or managed by the enterprise. And when we think about that a little bit more broadly, data governance is really about controlling the way people behave with regard to data and data technology. Specifically, it identifies the appropriate people to steward and govern various types of data. And typically, those people are going to be within your organization and not necessarily within IT. And we're going to talk about through some of those differences. But a rich data governance framework in your organization needs to be go across your business and be cross-functional. You need to pick the people who understand the data from within their organizations, because your technology org isn't necessarily going to be the group of people who best understand that data. You also need to set policies outlining the appropriate rules of data and behavior and management of that data. So these are things like change policies and understanding your master data list and those sorts of important things. And beyond just building those rules, you need to embed those rules into processes across your organization. So this is where we have things like master data list, processes, data control, and data governance. So we'll walk through how kind of all of these things intersect and support technology ownership, access, quality, and security. Data security is a component of data governance focused specifically on protecting data. And a lot of people don't fully understand why these two topics kind of go hand in hand, because data governance is typically something we focus on within the organization. You know, making sure the data quality is good, making sure our sales numbers are actually what our sales were. But at the same time, when we're doing data governance, it helps us as an organization understand what our data sets are and where our critical data sets are. I do a lot of talks on security, and one of the things I always like to bring up is anytime you do an additional security control, that is something you have to have burden with. It's or toil, is to pull a phrase from site reliability engineering. That burden and toil means any additional security control is a headache that you're going to have to manage. So we can't focus the highest levels of control on all of our data. That just doesn't work. If we kind of think about it from like a security perspective, you wouldn't want to make every room in your house like the vault at your bank. That means we can, if we understand where our data is, we can focus higher security controls and tighter auditing and all sorts of things like that on that most sensitive data where we have PII or customer data. And that's why security is an important aspect of data governance. Likewise, compliance. In the pharmaceutical world, we tried to break this down into kind of two categories. If you're not familiar with pharmaceutical manufacturing, there's this concept known as good manufacturing practices, or GMP. We would have systems that were GMP. Those systems were product impacting. And we would have systems that were non-GMP, and those were not product impacting. For example, our monitoring system to see what CPU was on servers was considered to be a non-GMP system. That allowed higher focus and levels of concentration to go into those GMP systems. And you can take the same approach to compliance in any organization you're in. It does require typically, this sort of thing in those companies requires IT to work alongside the compliance organization. And the most important thing, in my opinion, from an IT perspective, is that you ensure that your compliance folks understand how those systems are not impacting and why they're not impacting. And you're still going to have, in a regulated organization, you're still going to have some effects of that. You're probably going to have to do more paperwork even for those non-compliance based systems than somebody in, say, a software company. But at the same time, you're trying to reduce your burden so you can do your job and make your systems better. This also slightly ties back into security, because even things like doing patching on regulated systems can be a lot more challenging depending on the nature of your compliance organization. Data quality is something that's always super important and probably the most traditional outcome of data governance processes. We worked with a client a couple of years ago where they all of their sales process and intake went through various Excel spreadsheets that various users had built in the organization, and there was no single source of the truth for things important metrics like sales. Or I even see some industries. I'm kind of an avid cyclist, and one of the problems the bicycle industry has had post COVID is there was a big boom in bike sales during COVID. However, the industry didn't have good sales data before, and they still don't. So they made a lot of over purchasing decisions, and it's caused a lot of turmoil across the industry. Uh, Having that data quality, having understanding the needs of the data in the organization will help you drive better business intelligence decisions and allow your organization to make those really important decisions. And then finally, usability. And this is when we talk about data governance, this typically comes down to publishing things like proven data sets that are, your organization has certified this data set. This is a valid data set. This is our master customer list. This is our actual sales numbers for the last quarter. You can use this data in your reports and feel confident that you can make good decisions off of it. And this is something else that just kind of ties into our data governance processing. On the left here is some olive oil and water. And one of the things I always kind of like to talk about is how IT is not really a data governance role. Uh, it's weird because IT manages databases. IT puts security controls on systems. To an extent, IT does some data quality work, even with its own organization. But when we talk about data governance, this is the overall management of the data in an enterprise, not just IT. So IT can govern its own data. So your list of servers and your list of network ports and IP addresses are all things that should be managed by the IT organization. But with a well-designed data governance program, you should typically include various roles with various responsibilities. A senior executive who oversees the program, ideally this person is outside of the IT organization, they're a business-focused person. And then a governance team that manages it. This might be a group of senior directors and vice presidents. A steering committee or council that acts as the governing body. And that's who's going to approve things like changes and changes to process. And then a group of data stewards. And the data stewards are going to be frontline workers in each part of the organization that know and understand their data and can help better create standards and policies for governing that data and implement and enforce those procedures that are carried out by the data stewards. Ideally, your executives and other representatives from the business take part, including IT, but IT shouldn't be the driver. Data governance is the core component of an overall data management strategy. However, organizations do need to focus on it to get the expected benefits of a governance program, starting really in the early days of an initiative. This is a broad business solution, and outcomes aren't just good governance. Outcomes have to be better running businesses, and making your business more data driven will help with that. So, frameworks, choosing this. As your users and consumers keep growing, having a small data governance team can be challenging. Really, this needs to scale with your business. As your business grows and adds more functions, your data governance team needs to get bigger. So, this better approach is from a bottom up data management, and it makes data creators responsible for their own data governance. And if you look into some like modern business intelligence frameworks like data mesh and data fabrics, some of these are kind of designed from this bottom up framework. So it's not just a data governance thing, it's a holistic view into how modern data management systems also works. And then beyond compliance and security, governance makes for better decision making by providing more accurate data. We don't want our data to be modified. We want our data as close to coming out of our systems as it can possibly be. Those Excel processes, not good because we don't really understand what they are. It's an opaque box where we're sending data. I always like to kind of bring this up as a final point, but data governance really does help with compliance and security. And obviously, your organization needs to be able to address regulatory compliance and industry mandates. This can include things like GDPR in the EU, the California Consumer Privacy Act, or accounting mandates like Sarbanes-Oxley, or even data privacy for healthcare, like HIPAA. Data governance can show how your company is achieving the goals of regulatory compliance. Having this framework allows you to define and classify regular data in the scope of your regulations, determine how and where and your company uses, accesses, and moves regulated data. It also helps you manage appropriate security on that data. So it helps you build things like appropriate access control list, data subject consent, and evaluate risk exposure so you can remediate with protection and disposition that data accordingly. Identifying these key compliance and regulatory mandates are a critical part of every data governance readiness assessment. You risk non-compliance when you're not aware of what your industry regulations and regional laws are that apply to your business, and these can cost you lots of money in fines, penalties, and remediation costs. And you want to do this before you get fined. And what you need to know is that what the regulatory compliance requirements are, and build a data governance program to meet those. And you can add capabilities with some tooling. Like there are some tools that are available. Remember, this isn't a tool-based problem, but there are some tool solutions for particular functions like data discovery, data masking for anonymization, metadata management, so that you can ensure that your governance program can evolve over time and become more automated. While data governance may not be the most sexy technology topic, it is one of the most important to running a well-oiled IT organization and data-driven organization. And remember, this data governance framework is not a IT function, it is a business function. However, there's this like weird caveat where IT may have to push the business into doing it because IT may have some understanding around data governance, but you're not going to be the organization that's going to run this. It needs to come from the business. Finally, having good data governance improves your security and compliance postures, and it gives you the added benefit of having better business outcomes. If you can better understand your sales data, better understand your product supply chain, you can make better predictions and insights into the future of your business. With that, I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions today and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Joey. So much appreciated. And it's great to hear the way you've kind of laid that out and really given us some good things to think about. Now, for all of you in the audience there, I'm sure you've already noticed, but if you haven't, there's a poll up today, and we're just asking what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company. So maybe you're looking to do this right away in the next 6 months. Perhaps 6 to 12 by the end of the year. You've got a mandate for some updates. Perhaps it's about a couple of years, or maybe you're just not sure. You're here to learn, get some idea of what strategies are available to you, and from there, make some decisions. So do take a moment to click in and answer that polls. And with that, I'm about to introduce our first presenter. Now, today we have, again, 4 fantastic teams here to present. First up in our lineup is from Informatica. This is Eric Jarlstrom. He is a specialist of data governance and privacy. And I'll be joining Eric for Q&A. So this is one more reminder for all of you to send in your thoughtful questions to Eric, and I can pose those to him at the end of the presentation. But with that, Eric, are you ready?
I am ready. Thanks, McKinsey, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to, of course, talk about the GRC framework challenges and solution. And Joey have kind of set me up already for a good start. But just a little bit about me, 30 seconds here. I spent the last 20 years in security, privacy, and the last 9 years really around data governance. So, talking about common challenges around GRC, and there's a lot of them. And unfortunately, I only got a time slot on 20 minutes. I thought when my boss signed me up for this that, hey, at least I got an hour. But here's some of the things that I'm pretty sure a lot of you already recognize, right? One of the things that I see in many organizations when it comes to security, it comes to governance or GRC functions, right? They operate in silos. There's no communication. There's limited cross functionality, cross organizational communications, etc. So that's one of the key things. Of course, we all know about constraints and so on. But since I'm at a data management company, Informatica, right, let's dive a little bit in on some of the data management and privacy challenges that we see. And I thought, you know, with all the AI going around these days, everybody is talking about it. Some are doing it, some are not, right? I thought I wanted to kind of focus a little bit about AI and how that impact data management today. So we all have probably been playing with ChatGPT. We got, good results, bad results, a little bit of everything, right? But a lot of people is trying it, and I think that the ChatGPT has really driven a lot of organizations to start thinking about AI. Some have already been doing it, right? But at the same time, a lot of consumers are concerned about, is it what is the results we are getting out here? And we've seen a lot of incidents already that have happened around the world. And then one thing that probably few are thinking about, but these large language models require a lot of horsepower, a lot of computer power to feed the engine, so to speak. And that has a lot of carbon emissions, coming out. So here's just some examples, and these are a little outdated. I wonder how many is actually using ChatGPT. I presume that everybody is using it almost on a daily basis these days. So if we look a little bit on the regulations and what's happening around the world, right? Here's a quote from Margaret Vestager from the European Union. So of course, as usual, the European Union is really out there and saying, when it comes to AI, trust is a must. It's not a nice to have. That's kind of their philosophy in the European Union. And and from a regulations perspective, we've seen in the US that an executive order has been created. There is regulation starting to come together. And at the end of the day, it's all about protecting the individuals, right? Our privacy, making sure that the models are not biased, etc., standing up for consumers. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that we can use AI for accelerating innovation in healthcare and other places, right? So we don't want to hold back, but we still need to have some control. If we look across to our friends in Europe, obviously they have already the first AI Act. Again, they're spearheading, so to speak. And one interesting thing is that they have mandated that you have to risk score your AI models. So high risk or unacceptable risk would be, for instance, the use of facial recognition in your model. That's a no-no. But you need to kind of being able to document the risk level of your models, right? So you're all aware about it. And at the end of the day, again, it's about providing safe AI models that don't discriminate. And at the same time, they have also included that it has to be environmentally friendly. Uh, so with that said, if we look at it and look at it when it comes to governance and come to governed data, it's almost like it's represented here. If you think about a restaurant, great restaurant, right? We expect that we have high quality ingredients in the food. The same when it comes to AI models, right? We need to be able to go out and pick data. So we need to understand what we have out there, and we need to inventory that. And we need to make sure that data sets or the data sets we are looking at don't contain any bias and so on. And we need to make sure that they comply to laws and not only AI laws as they're coming along, but also comply to privacy laws. At the same time, we need to understand as we're looking at the data and we're trying to pick what to choose, we need to have visibility into where's that data coming from, right? What sources, what kind of transformation does it go through? And then we need to be confident in that data that it has good, high quality. We don't want to feed and spend a lot of time feeding bad data into our models and get bad results out there. And then at the same time, as we are preparing data sets, we are preparing models and start applying policies to them, right? We need to have an easy way to find those models, understand what they do, understand what data they are using, and understand what policies applies to them. And for European purpose, understanding what risk level those models have as well. So some of the key challenges, of course, is, I would say initially the uncertainty. The regulation is just starting, right? And we, on many organizations I talk to, some has already built some models, some are very mature, have policies around it. Others are just dipping their toes, and they don't even have any processes in place, and so on. At the same time, regulations, as we talked about, what is changing, and there will be probably more and more coming as we coming downstream. And then, as Jody talked about, for governance, and it's the same for AI compliance, right? We can't have scientists and the business analytics team sitting in a vacuum creating these models, and or the policymakers sitting in vacuum. We need to have cross-functional teams here. We need communication so everybody understands what's going on. We need to remove all the red tape. We need to have a mechanism to move forward. And then at the same time, right, as legislation starts coming, we need to be quick. We need to have some models in place quickly, and put a framework in place so as new regulations comes out, we can quickly review those, adapt it to our policies, and now making sure and apply it to our models and making sure we are still in compliance. So, what would be some of the key capabilities we need in place to manage this, and what would the outcome look like, right? So, if we look here on the right, what we really want, our end goal is really to be able to have AI at scale, right? So as we're building these models, we want to have a way where we can scale this, create more and more to automate mundane tasks, to help us in the business drivers and so on. At the same time, we need obviously to meet the regulations. We need to be in compliance and have control over these models. And that also means that we need to have appropriate owners and stewards assigned to the models, to the data, understanding full where it's coming in. And really, I think that what we will see is in the organization, a center of excellence will be created with representation from business, from the technical side of the house, where there'll be focus on managing these AI models, managing the data sets that's used, and so on. So how do we get there to get this in place? And I need to push the right button here. So the first thing is really to start documenting the models, or as we are creating the models, to get them documented. What I see in many organizations where they started with building AI models is really been data scientists doing it, and they've done it in vacuum, right? So a lot of the knowledge about the model itself is sitting in those scientists' head. We need to get that documented so we understand input, the output, the data that's used, the purpose, and so on. And then, of course, we need to now, if we want to apply it to the European Union, we need to assign some risk level to those models. The next thing we need to do is, of course, we need to classify that data out there. And both the data sets and all the attributes, we need to understand what we got when we start picking these. And then, we need to apply policies and processes to that data. So we know what processes is consuming it. We know what policies is guarding that data, so to speak. The next thing is then to understand that data lineage, the end-to-end. Where's data coming from? Where is it moving to? What kind of transformation is it going in? And a lot of times you will see that you may be using some of the data sets for your models, but that data, goes further downstream, right? So it's used other places as well. So is there any risk associated to that data, right? So we need to understand the full end-to-end picture around that data. Then the idea is really that, as we are starting to document and classify data, building data sets, building the AI models and linking it all together, we also need a way to share that to the end consumers, right? And a way where I can look at what is governed data sets that's available for using models. I may look for financials, or I may use for customer data if I'm looking at a customer churn model I'm trying to build, right? Where do I have good customer data that's trustworthy, right? Instead of looking across the organization, or maybe even in a catalog, I may go to a marketplace where the stewards has pushed it out, so I can easily shop for it, for instance. And then the last thing is, of course, I need to have data quality in place. I really need to understand, the profiling information, that I need to make sure that it has good quality, observability. Maybe I'm building data pipeline that pumps data into my models, right? I need to make sure that those pipeline don't break. I will need to make sure that only good quality data is feeding into the model. So those are the foundational pillars that I need to have in place in order to, reach the end goal of good AI data governance. And of course, if I add one more pillar, kind of saying, the boxes, and you will hear in a second how these specific boxes could fit our Informatica solution and how we can help. But beyond this framework, there's a couple of other things to think about or consideration. It's interesting enough, yesterday I talked to one of my customer, a mortgage company, where I talked to the VP of Business Analytics and AI. And he is establishing a framework for the organization where they are already documenting their current AI model internally, but they are also documenting all their suppliers' AI model that they are using. So they are obviously using third-party models for credit risk calculations or and so forth, right? So that's one thing to consider, is who is responsible for those external models, and making sure that you also apply policies to them. So in their case, he told me that they are already now, they've built a set of policies. The models they have, they're starting to add them, and now they're building guidelines for how to, conduct and build additional models. What's the process, and here are the sets of policies that needs to be adhered to. Of course, if you wanted to, how are you planning to react on the risk scoring? How are you going to build the risk scoring model as well? That's something that you need to think about. And then we see that, especially public companies here in the States, right? You have a mandate to do ESG reporting, and it could make sense to kind of see if there's any correlation between your ESG effort and your AI effort. You can maybe gain some momentum by joining forces there if it's a separate team and saying, hey, do we have some synergy? Can we work together here? So with this, let's talk specifically about how can Informatica help as a company? What solutions do we have in place to help you with AI governance and when it comes to data management? So Informatica has a platform we call an Intelligent Data Management Cloud, which is really a SaaS application that consists of multiple services that's all integrated, that sits on a common connectivity layer. And of course, we are using some AI machine learning to help with some of the uh, tasks such as tagging business term to technical metadata, tagging for classifier to the metadata, building data quality rules, and so on. But if we talk about how we can help from a governance perspective and help from a data management perspective, if we look at the left, we got the data cataloging service that basically enables you to capture and build a metadata inventory, right? So you understand what you have. And part of that cataloging could also be to cataloging your AI models. Then we got data integration, right? That you can use to build your trusted pipeline. So you can move data around, take it out from your source systems, transform the data, apply data quality to it, and put it in places that you would use to feed your models. And then, of course, the center, is the data quality and observability. Being able to other at the source system level to go through and making sure that what is the current status of the quality, but it could also be used in the pipeline to either fix issues right as it flows through the data pipeline, or just report on it, report on anomalies, and so on. And then we got the governance and the privacy parts is really where you assign ownership, where you basically get the business to communicate together with the IT, right? So putting the business context around your technical data. So, you know, putting ownership, putting business definitions to it, putting classifier in, and so on, and link it all together. So you apply policies, you apply business processes. So as you're looking at lineage, for instance, you could see what is the business processes consuming this data, and so forth. And then the last little box there, the data marketplace. Think about this as a Amazon for metadata, where your business producers can, your IT team can push out data sets that's been curated. Maybe it's the data stewards that pushing them out data sets, reports, AI models, and then the business consumers can go and shop for data. And of course, you could do in categories and so on. But the idea is an easy way to go and find my curated other reports, models, data, and so forth. So if we look a little bit more on what we can do, and just some step here, they don't necessarily need to come in this order, but one thing that we've done is in the governance and catalog solution, we enabled the ability to document your AI model. So you can, of course, put descriptions in, input, output, ownership, bias score, etc. But then the idea is also that you can link it to the data sets. So if it's a model for training, right, it will be linked to the training data set. So at any point, I can go in and see what models do we have and what data are these models using. And this will help tremendously in the case what we see, there's big turnover as well for scientists, right? They're a hot commodity. So if we don't document those models, it will take the next in line, some time to get up to speed. But by having documented the models, right, you can quickly get up to speed. You know pretty much what the model does. Of course, I can link to the repository where the physical code resides, right? If I want to understand it from that perspective, this is more the documentation part of it. Then when it comes to being able to consume that data, and this is really the marketplace I was talking about, and this just illustrates with a few screenshots, right? That the Amazon like experience, or it could be Best Buy. I'm going in, I'm looking for a TV. I'm looking for a TV that's at least between 60 and 80 inch, and so forth. So I can go in, I can search, I can put a lot of different criteria in. So when it comes to data, I want certified data. I want data in my Snowflake, where I can pull it out from the Snowflake cluster and so forth. So of course I can search, or I could go directly to the different categories. It could be sales, finance, whatever you defined, production, right? So oh, let me check if there's something there. And then the idea is that then I go through as I'm looking up at a data sets, I can see who else is using the data sets. I can see the data quality score that's attached, and these things comes directly from the catalog. Um, and then if I find something I like, I can request access to the data sets, right? I can go through a checkout process, and that could be automated for approval. And we even have the capability then to embed security into the data set. So depending on who is requesting access, you may not be able to see all the data elements. So we can then, as part of the checkout process, those elements, can be masked, you could be removed, things like that automatically. So that's one important thing, that not only can I request access, but we can actually embed in security as part of you getting access to a particular data set.
Hey
Then
there,
the
Eric. I just want to give you a heads up. We've got about 2 minutes more here. So,
yeah, I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
okay, no worries. Keep on rolling.
Thank you. So then on the cleansing, right, we are able to go in, profile data, run data quality rules, etc. So we understand what we have. We can get the total insights into relationship. We can see downstream impact of quality scores. I can see, in this case, it's a business term, but it could be a model. I could see what policies applies, either visually or graphically, right? Um, we have the ability to, as part of our scanning, to automatically classify the data, or of course, you can curate it as well. You can assign business terms to your catalog. So you get that business insight that I talked about earlier. And then one of the things we have the capability to do is showing lineage. Everybody can show lineage these days, but what we can do that's different is we can overlay the lineage diagram with sensitivity. So you could spot, you see here some red dots, right? Where do I have high risk, medium risk, low risk data that's flowing through? But I can also overlay it with data quality, right? So when I'm looking at a model and I want to see where that data comes from, I also want to see that I have good data quality, at least at the end, but hopefully all the way through the lineage itself. And then the last slide is really about being able to govern the data, being able to put stakeholders on, security level, and so forth. So with that, let's go to Q&A. Mackenzie.
Sure thing. I think we might have time just for one question, if that's okay. But I have a couple questions that came in about kind of platform pricing. So one is kind of how's a platform priced? Is it consumption based? And then someone else is asking, do we need to buy every service separately on the IDMC platform, or can I kind of just get blanket access?
Yeah, that's some good questions, Mackenzie. So the whole platform, you get access to all of the services with one login, and of course, your admin can control what you as a user can access. And yes, this is a SaaS-based solution, so each of these services is consumption driven, and of course, each of them has different ways of calculating the consumption. But to wrap it up, yes, one single consumption-driven platform.
Okay, excellent. So we do have a few more questions, but I think that's all the time we have for today. But for those who are in the audience, they're curious to get started. They want to take the next steps with Informatica. Where should they go? What should they do? What's the first step?
So I think that the first step is to download the PDF that contains a quick overview of the governance solution that we talked about today and some of the facets there. And then feel free to reach out to me on my email or directly on Informatica and get your local sales rep engaged.
Perfect. And for those who do want to email you, what's that email, Eric?
So my email is ejarlstrom@informatica.com.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I hope to have you back sometime soon.
Thanks for allowing me to be here today.
Of course, a pleasure. Take care. All right. As Eric mentioned, if you haven't already, check out that handouts tab. We do have some awesome resources from Informatica and the other presenters who are upcoming. So do grab that PDF there. Again, it is a data sheet on cloud data governance and catalog. You'll definitely want to keep that and follow up with what we talked about here in the conversation with Eric today. And I do have a poll up here for you. So if you are looking for any other additional information from Informatica, data sheets, white papers, personal demo, further pricing details, just click into that poll and let them know exactly what you're looking for. The team from Informatica will follow up and make sure you get what you are seeking in a timely fashion after the EcoCast. With that, I also have a prize to give away. Reminder, we have 3 $300 Amazon gift cards going out to those of you who are present and live at the webinar. So you must be live to win. And our first lucky winner of the day is Paul Geromini. I want to say Geronimo for some reason. Great name either way. So Paul Jeromy, you are from Massachusetts. You're the first lucky winner of the $300 Amazon gift card. And we will be in touch about having to claim your prize after the webinar. So don't forget to keep your questions rolling in, because not only do we have these prizes, but we also have the best question prize from each session going out to you as well. Now, that said, I'm going to wrap up this poll and get things rolling to our next presenting team. And folks, our next team is named Keeper. Keeper is the next in our star-studded lineup. We have Teresa Rotar. She's the GRC analyst at Keeper. And again, keep those questions coming in because I'll be posing these questions live with Teresa. And with that, Teresa, let's do this.
Okay, everybody. I am Teresa Rotar. I hope you all are having a great afternoon or morning, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. I'm the senior GRC analyst here at Keeper Security, and today I'm going to talk to you about some of the challenges of building a robust GRC framework for your organization, and I'm also going to offer you some solutions along the way. So, with all that in mind, let's get started. Got Mackenzie running the slides. Slide 2, please, Mackenzie. Now, compliance costs are extremely high. We all know that. According to Investopedia, the average organization spends about $5.5 million on compliance every year, but the cost of non-compliance, that's even worse. They estimate that at being about $15 million, nearly 3 times higher. What are the biggest contributors to these annual costs? Well, most of it is administrative tasks. Most organizations still perform their compliance tasks inside silos. And during audits, that results in what one of my very first clients in cybersecurity like to call audit anarchy. And audit anarchy is the mad dash to chase down all the people and documentation needed for an audit. You have to go to HR for this, you have to go to finance for that, you have to go to this person, that person. This wastes untold work hours just chasing people down to get what you need for the auditor. Next slide, please. There is a veritable alphabet soup of IT compliance certifications and regulations. We in compliance, we love our acronyms. We got HIPAA, we got SOX, we got PCI, and so on and so on. However, all of these frameworks have one thing in common. They have one common end goal. You're trying to prevent an organizational data breach. You're trying to keep your data safe and your customers' data safe. Now, unfortunately, the cyber threat environment has become more dangerous than ever. And most of that is of our own doing. We didn't mean to do that. We were just trying to create new and more efficient ways of working. But in doing so, we increased our attack surface, cloud computing, mobility, the shift to remote work. That's been a boon for employees and organizations alike. Employees can work from wherever they're located, and organizations can hire the very best people, no matter where they are in the world. But all this has some drawbacks. First of all, people's home networks generally don't have the same security controls as organizational networks. And then if you have people working from hotels, your road warriors, like your sales reps, well, that's even worse. I mean, public Wi-Fi at hotels, at airports, and coffee shops is notoriously insecure. Then, if your organization allows BYOD, bring your own device, and a lot of organizations do, at least to some extent, well, those devices, they aren't going to have anywhere near as robust security controls as an organizational-owned device is. My personal phone certainly doesn't have the same security protections as my work laptop. Next slide, please, Mackenzie. Now, one of the biggest threats is account compromise, essentially stealing a password and being able to get into a system or a device. Microsoft did a study a couple years back, and they found that multi-factor authentication can prevent virtually all account compromise attacks, like 99.999%, something like that. But only a little over 25% of users actually enable MFA wherever it's supported. And that's because, let's be realistic, MFA, it could be a bit of a pain It requires the user to take extra steps to log in, and usually these days it's fumbling with a mobile phone. I gotta find my cell phone. I gotta get the push notification. I gotta get the code from the app. Whenever you put stumbling blocks in front of your users, they're gonna try to avoid them, not because they don't care about security, but because they're just trying to get their job done more efficiently. And you know, oh my God, where's my phone? I gotta get into this system and do my work now. I don't have time to spend 10 minutes looking for my phone. So they just won't enable MFA. They'll try to avoid enabling it, and then, well, you don't have that extra layer of protection. If somebody steals their password, they can get right into that account. Next slide, please. Okay, now that we've taken a look at some of the problems, I'm going to talk to you about some of the solutions. First, the principle of least privilege. Now, this is an extremely simple concept, but it's really effective in preventing data breaches, or at least decreasing the blast radius if a data breach occurs. It just means that you give your users the appropriate amount of systems and data access to perform their jobs and no more. So, as an example, only the employees you have that actually work on your payroll system need to be able to get into the payroll system. Only your sales team needs to be able to get into Salesforce or whatever CRM it is that you're using at your company. Least privileged access mitigates threats from malicious or, and this is the more common scenario, careless insiders. So it prevents people who have no business being in your payroll system or in your CRM or wherever it is to just go in there and start poking around. They just want to see what's in there. People are curious. Well, you don't want people getting too curious, because then they could make mistakes, or they could access data that is, you know, way above their pay grade, and then that can throw you out of compliance. Now, additionally, least privilege also limits external threat actors if they do manage to compromise a set of user credentials that aren't protected by MFA. So they can only access what the compromised user can access instead of the entire system. You don't want every user to have God mode, because then any user that gets compromised, well, then the threat actor has access to the whole system. A data breach is never a good thing. Even when it's small, we want to prevent it. But least privilege at least ensures that that breach is contained. So it does two things: protects you from the careless insiders, the malicious insiders, and from the external threat actors should the worst happen and an account be compromised. Next slide, please. Least privileged access can be achieved in multiple ways. One of them, there's a whole bunch of frameworks, and one of the most popular are role-based enforcements. The way role-based enforcement works is, rather than provisioning access on the level of individual users, we create a smaller set of roles, then slot employees into those roles. You don't want to onboard every user and then manually give them access and everything they need. Think about the kind of time that would take. That would really only work if you could count your employees on one hand and have fingers left over. Maybe you could sit there and do that. Otherwise, you're getting in the dozens, hundreds, thousands of employees. Being able to just hire people and then you slot them into a role and then they have everything they need to do their job from day one, well, that's a lot simpler for you. Also a lot simpler when you offboard them. You just remove their role permissions and you remove them from all of your systems. Takes a lot of stress off your IT team while also enhancing your security. Now, additionally, role-based controls can also be used to mandate your policies. Employees don't like having to fumble with MFA. Well, role-based controls can make sure that they have to enable MFA. You can require it, and they won't be able to do anything unless they enable it. You could also do things like mandate geographic or time of day restrictions, data export restrictions. So if you have people working all over the world or even just all over your country in multiple time zones, you could set it so that they can only access your systems during their normal work hours, depending on where they're located. So you can make it that employees that are supposed to be in the United States, well, if they try to log in from Europe, they can't do that, or anywhere else in the world, they can't do that. And that helps prevent account compromises, because one of the ways you can detect an account compromise is all of a sudden, somebody in Idaho, they're trying to log in from Berlin. What? That's a big sign there that maybe their account's compromised. The role-based controls could be used to prevent that from happening in the first place. You could also do things like put on data export permissions. Some employees will need to export data as part of their job. Well, you can make it so that certain roles they're allowed to do that, and other roles they're just not allowed to because they don't need to. There's no reason for them to be doing it, so we're not going to give them that permission. Okay, next slide, please, Mackenzie. Now, we're going to talk about how Keeper can help you implement role-based policies and control your employees' password practices. The way Keeper does it, we let you control user access on the levels of roles, teams, and nodes. Let me go over all those. So it'll make sense once I explain it, I promise. Now, roles are just what I went on about in the last slide or two. They allow you to define enforcement policies based on users' job responsibility, and you could also provide delegated administrative functions this way. Now, teams allow you to share accounts among predefined user groups. Ideally, you don't want people sharing passwords. You want everybody to have their own login, own unique login to every system. But in the real world, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. There may be situations where certain people on a team need to share a set of login credentials. Teams let you do that safely. It also ensures consistency of enforcement policies across this collective group of individuals. So you ensure that that shared account, well, it has MFA enabled. And then finally, there are nodes. Now, nodes are used to organize your users into distinct groupings. This is much like your organizational units, your OUs, and Active Directory. And you can create nodes based on location, department, division, or any other structure that your company wants. We give you lots of options. It's customizable. You can customize it to your needs. You can tailor it to your organization's specific needs. Next slide, please. Now, what about your most privileged users, your IT admins and your DevOps teams? They need to get into some pretty sensitive systems, and a lot of times they're doing it remotely, because they're working from home or wherever. Enter Keeper Connection Manager. It's an agentless remote desktop gateway that provides your IT admins and DevOps teams with secure and easy remote access to RDP, SSH, database, and Kubernetes endpoints right through their web browser, negating the need for them to have to use a VPN. VPNs, they're a pain to configure. They tend to suffer from sluggishness. People really don't like VPNs for very good reasons. Keeper Connection Manager lets you just ditch the VPN, make it so that your IT admins and your DevOps teams can get into these highly sensitive systems and do their work, again, safely. Next slide, please. Now, Keeper ARAM helps you monitor employee compliance and prevent audit anarchy by providing Keeper administrators and compliance teams with the tools they need to monitor overall usage and policy adherence. And it also gives you a robust reporting engine. At audit time, you can generate custom time-based reports with over 100 different event types broken down by category. This includes reports specifically tailored to address SOX, ISO, and SOC compliance reporting, auditing requirements. So it's going to greatly reduce the time that you need to spend during the audit chasing all those people around in audit anarchy. Then Keeper ARAM also helps you monitor user password behavior and compliance year-round with webhooks and SIM integration. You can tell it that you want it to send alerts using webhooks or SIM integration based on activities that you define within ARAM, that there's certain behaviors that you want to be alerted on. Next slide, please. We here at Keeper are super excited to announce 2 recently launched features. We had gotten tons of requests for these, and this is how we end up incorporating a lot of features into our product. We listen to what our customers want when they ask for things, when they tell their reps, hey, I'd really like this. We see if we can integrate it. So these 2 features that we recently launched, time-limited access and self-destructing records. And I'm going to tell you more about those and how they can help you. Next slide, please. Time-limited access lets you securely share credentials or secrets with other individual Keeper users on a temporary basis, and then it automatically revokes their access at a time that you specify. This greatly reduces the risk of unauthorized access by automatically removing the shares from the other user's vault after the share expires at the time that you specify it. So what happens is when you set a time-limited access, you're actually sending this to the other person's Keeper vault directly. So it's all very safe. It's all zero knowledge, no sticky notes or emails or anything insecure. They get it in their vault. They get a notification from Keeper. Hey, so-and-so just shared a Keeper record with you. Log in and see it. And then, you could use it for files. You could use it for login credentials that you only want somebody to have temporarily, whatever it is you want. Next slide, please. Now, self-destructing records they're similar to time-limited access, but the person you're sharing with does not need to have a Keeper account to access the shared record. So this is great when you're sharing a record outside your organization, maybe with a freelancer or a contractor who's doing work for your company, but since they're not part of your organization, you haven't provisioned them a Keeper vault. They're not in your account. They work for another company or they work for themselves. Well, this lets you safely share records with them anyway without them needing to have a Keeper account. And what happens here, the record does not leave your vault. You're sending them a secure link to a record in your vault. You set an expiration date, and the record automatically deletes itself from your vault. It self-destructs once the share link expires and the recipient's access is revoked. This saves you a lot of time, and it's also a lot safer because you don't need to remember to access this record and remove it from your vault. Keeper just does it automatically. So you share this with your freelancer or your contractor, you set it for 10 days or whatever, and then when it expires, boom, it's gone. It's like it never even happened. Next slide, please. Interested in finding out more about Keeper? Sure you are. And Keeper will give you a free 3-year personal Keeper password manager plan just for attending one of our demos. It's all you have to do is attend the demo, and we'll talk to you a lot more about all the things Keeper can do for your organization, because I really just, gave you the Reader's Digest version here in this webinar. And then you could get a free 3-year personal Keeper plan so you can keep yourself safe online. The personal Keeper password manager plans have the same zero-knowledge encryption, all the same abilities as the business plans, but for individuals. So you just don't have like the business stuff. You have all the safety and a whole bunch of features, but you just don't have, teams and, things like that you don't need as an individual. Okay, well, that does it for my presentation. Now I will open up the floor to your questions.
Okay. Well, you've already had some questions come in throughout the presentation. So,
Brilliant.
Yeah, actually, there's quite a few. So we'll see how many we
Cool.
can get through. Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. First question. There's so many. Okay, so this is about those 2 new features. This should be an easy question. Are they included with normal license, or is it an add-on to the base Keeper license?
Let me see here. I'm just checking that.
There. Good to know. We don't want to give misinformation.
They are both included with the regular Keeper licensing, and no add-on is needed.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
I'm sorry. Sorry it took a moment there, since these are brand new, and I don't normally do sales. I just wasn't entirely sure.
No worries, no worries. Okay, next question here is it only passwords, or can you self-destruct other types of records? For example, attachments, payment info, and so on.
That I know right off the bat. Self-destructing records could be applied to any type of record, including documents, spreadsheets, images and photos, whatever you want.
Okay, cool. And similar vein here, this question is from Phil. He says, when the access expires, is the admin notified to change the password?
Admins can set up automatic password rotation for the record, so they don't even need to be notified. They could set it up at the beginning where it just automatically changes the password.
Oh, very cool. That's very nifty. I like this. You guys, I might have to use this for the personal account you're talking about here.
Well, come to a demo and we'll set you up.
Okay. What else we got in here? Lots of goodies. Okay, so this is also to do with the self-destructing records. This asks, how does the timer work for the self-destructing records?
Oh, that's great. The timer doesn't begin until the user actually opens the link. So let's say you only want the person to have it for 24 hours or something really short.
Yeah.
That countdown doesn't begin until they actually open the link. Ooh. So users can, and you can set the time, and it could be anywhere from minutes to hours. It could be 15 minutes if you want it to just be 15 minutes, 24 hours, days, whatever it is you want, whatever it is you need.
I feel like this should be used for like contests and university exams, right? Because they're always like, don't do this, don't do that. You're like, this is the way to make it actually happen automatically.
Well, it's really great if you have, let's say you have somebody who's doing temporary work for you for, I don't know, the next 90 days or something, where you could just set the record to automatically expire in 90 days.
Yeah.
So that way, when they stop doing work for you, that's the end of it. It automatically just yanks their access.
The offboarding process in a lot of companies is very clunky and inconsistent. Yeah. So this kind of just sets it up from the get-go. That's great.
Yeah, and auditors check that as part of the SOC too, and a lot of these other audit frameworks. When you go through an audit, they'll pull people at random and terminated employees, terminated users, and they'll ask to see proof that you terminated them access from the system within a certain amount of time.
Okay.
So this gives you proof that you did that.
That's amazing. Okay, we have maybe time for one more question here. This one, I have a couple that have come in around kind of sharing permissions. So this is, can you set sharing permissions to folders, or do those settings encompass the whole environment?
Oh no, you could set it just to folders. We have quite a bit of granularity as to who can share what throughout your organization, and that's applicable from the record level all the way on up to the folder level. So if you going back to the freelancer and contractor example, if you could put everything that this temporary person would need in a folder and share that folder with them so that they have everything they need to work for you for whatever period of time they're going to work for you for.
All right. Amazing. Well, I think that's all the time we have today, but thank you so much for being here. And
thank you.
Are there any final words you want to leave the audience with today, or a final call to action?
Please secure your passwords, because that's usually how people end up getting breached. It's, you see on TV, they show these hackers viciously typing in hoodies in front of the computer, and the overwhelming majority of the time, that's not how it happens. They get into your systems because they compromise somebody's password, or somebody clicks on a phishing link compromising their password. That's almost always how it happens. Then they get the password, boom, they go right into your system. So please secure your passwords.
Yes,
come attend one of our demos, and we'll give you the free subscription so you can secure your own passwords too.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Great to have you here, and hope to have you back again.
Love to be back. Have a great day.
Right. So secure your passwords, people. Please secure your passwords. Thank you one final time, Teresa. That was awesome. I do have another poll up here. So if you are interested in any further information from Keeper, this is your easy button, your wish list. One simple click and the team from Keeper will send you the desired follow-up after today's EcoCast. If you want to learn more right away, click into that handouts tab and go check out the data sheet, Keeper Privileged Access Management. It is about the next generation privileged access management for every user on every device from every location. Okay, so let's keep this show on the road. Next up in our awesome lineup is our friends from Rubrik. Rubrik, you probably have heard if you've been on our EcoCast or MegaCast before, but really awesome. Really good to see some familiar faces here today. And of course, we're going to get some timely and some practical info with both a presentation and a live demo from the team. So I'm going to close out this poll now. If you're hesitating, quickly get your hands there. Give a click on anything you're looking for from Keeper, and then we'll move right on to the Rubrik team. Now, next up is Veer Choksi. Veer is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Rubrik. Veer, it's so great to have you here today. And again, we are excited to have both a presentation and demo of Rubrik and Rubrik Zero Labs. So Veer, take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Veer Choksi. I've been with Rubrik for a little bit over 2 years. Now, in my role, I get to speak with both IT and security professionals. I imagine that this audience skews a little bit more towards the security side, and in many organizations, these functions are fairly siloed. So my goal with this presentation is to bring you all a little bit into the world of IT and backup, and to explain how enterprise backup and recovery belongs in the cybersecurity conversation and is a really vital component of cyber resilience. So we're going to talk about a newish flavor of security called data security. We're going to talk about why recoverability is a key part of cyber resilience. I'm going to spend some time talking about why backup matters and what you can get out of your backups. And then I'm going to end with a few final thoughts. So backup was really built for disaster recovery, meaning things like operational failures and natural disasters. However, in the age of cybercrime, this is simply not enough. It's important to have secure backup, and backups are often your last line of defense. Now, cybersecurity traditionally has focused on infrastructure security around prevention and detection in your production systems. And despite significant investments in infrastructure security and prevention tools, the risk of a breach can only be reduced. It can't be completely eliminated. Attackers, as everybody knows, are still managing to penetrate defenses and get at your data. So just as important as reducing the likelihood of a successful attack is reducing the impact of an attack. How quickly can business as usual be restored if an attack were to happen? And how can you, as a potential victim, make informed decisions to enable a successful recovery? And I'll explain why backups play a really important role. The typical security stack is necessary but not sufficient because attackers are still managing to deny victims their own data. We can think of ransomware and other types of cyber attacks as denial of data attacks. I want to set the stage with a little bit of research from Rubrik Zero Labs, our threat research unit. We commission market research, use third-party information, and also telemetry from Rubrik customers. And last year, 93% of organizations surveyed reported malicious actors attempting to impact their data backups. And 73% of those efforts were at least partially successful. Now, this is a broad survey, it's not Rubrik customers, but this goes to show that backups are something that both IT and security teams should have an interest in. Now, is your data an easy target? As I said before, traditional backup architectures were designed for disaster recovery and not so much for malicious cyber attacks. And it's important for us to ask ourselves questions like, are 100% of our backups immutable? Is the backup infrastructure physically isolated from the environment that it's protecting? And are multi-factor authentication and retention lock properly enforced? If not, your backups can get tampered with and you might not have anything to recover. You might be forced to consider having to pay a ransom. And with IT environments becoming more complex, distributed, hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, a similar set of considerations also applies to your cloud data. So backup is not cyber recovery, and disaster recovery is not cyber recovery in today's day and age. And when impacted by a cyber attack, organizations have to answer questions like, what exactly do I recover? Was sensitive data in scope? What is a safe restore point? And how do I ensure that I don't restore the malware? You need answers to those questions fast so that you can respond quickly and confidently. And executives and boards are also seeking answers to questions around cyber recovery, such as, are we good? Can you prove it? And how long will it take? So your data protection and data security platform has a major role to play in answering those kinds of questions. So let's spend a moment talking about some considerations around recoverability. So in order to meet business continuity objectives, backups need to be configured with the right policies for each data object, namely how often you're taking backup snapshots and how long data is retained. When an incident occurs, you need to determine what systems were impacted and the last known clean snapshot, easier said than done, and restore it to get back to business as usual. And so the red part here is all downtime. And recoverability is described by two key metrics, recovery point objective and recovery time objective, RPO and RTO. RPO is the point that you can recover from. RTO is the time it takes to recover. RPO is largely dictated by the frequency at which backups are happening. And the RTO is actually largely dictated by physics. There is some influencing that can be done here architecturally, but RPO is the easier knob to turn. At the end of the day, if the frequency of backup snapshots is too infrequent and the physics are not optimized, That can result in lost data and productivity. When I say data loss here, it's not exactly the same as data loss in the DLP context, but it's still losing your own data nonetheless. Now, why does backup matter? So there are benefits to tackling data protection and data security on the same platform. The first big one being there's a large surface area of data in your backups. Most organizations are backing up many different types of objects, including Windows and Linux file systems, NAS shares, databases, VMs, etc. Security tools like EDRs and antivirus software aren't always deployed on all of those objects. They're not always monitoring and listening on all of your critical infrastructure and critical data objects. So there is a lot of intelligence that can be gathered by analyzing those immutable backups across time. And I'll get a little bit more into that. And this can all be done via a fully hosted and integrated platform. And Rubrik Security Cloud is a SaaS offering. So you can remove silos with a single platform for data protection, data threat analytics, data security posture, and cyber recovery. And you can take advantage of the latest innovations delivered automatically to you. So the question really is, what if you could leverage your existing backup data to investigate threats and recover with greater speed and confidence? Because everybody has backups already, right? So your own backup data can actually be a rich source of intelligence to improve your cyber resilience. Now, some of the questions that I posed earlier can be addressed with data threat analytics. And data threat analytics refers to the ability to continuously monitor your data for risks and detect cyber threats. So if you're taking regular backup snapshots, you're in a good position to recruit your data in the fight against ransomware and other types of cyber incidents. And that's because you're capturing the longitudinal time series history of data if you're protecting your data with Rubrik. And additionally, Rubrik manages metadata, including its content, users, and access privileges to shed light on your data security posture. And so by scanning hundreds of snapshots, Rubrik's data threat analytics engine generates signals that are fed into a highly trained machine learning model. And that builds a historical baseline against which new data can be compared to find anomalous modifications, deletions, and encryptions. And again, we're capturing time series data from enterprise, cloud, and SaaS environments, feeding that data into the data threat engine, and that can result in valuable security intelligence, shining a light on those blind spots so that you can make informed recovery decisions and even get automated remediation recommendations. So what can you do with data threat analytics? You can detect threats early by automatically identifying indicators of compromise within backups using an up-to-date feed of threat intelligence. You can determine the scope of ransomware attacks using machine learning to detect deletions, modifications, and encryptions. And you can determine the initial point, scope, and time of infection by identifying specific indicators of compromise within the time series history of backup data. And because all of this scanning is done on backups, there's no impact to your production systems. So let's take a look at each of those three services within data threat analytics, starting with threat monitoring. So the way this works is that threat intelligence is fed into the Rubrik threat feed. The hashes and Yara rules themselves can come from different contributors. One of the contributors is Rubrik's own InfoSec team. So you can leverage the same intelligence that we're protecting Rubrik the business with. Intelligence also comes from Zero Labs, Rubrik's threat research team, and it can also come from third parties. Either way, we vet the intelligence prior to including it in the feed to ensure the quality of the intelligence is high and that the threats are relevant to critical infrastructure environments. The intelligence gets downloaded at set time intervals, and when there's new intelligence available, a hunt gets kicked off automatically and searches for threats based off of those hashes and Yara rules. And should a match occur, you'll be notified right away by email. You can then drill down via the dashboard to see where the threat was located, what hash or Yara was matched, and find attributes associated with that hash or Yara for more background information to assist in potentially kicking off other threat hunts via Rubrik's threat hunting service or via third-party tools like a SIEM or an EDR. You can also quarantine the threat within your backup from within threat monitoring as well. So essentially, this threat monitoring service is a turnkey solution to help detect and protect your organization from threats. The intelligence gets downloaded automatically. It hunts based off of this intelligence automatically. And if any threats are found, you'll be notified about the threat, and any attributes associated with that threat will be shared whenever possible. It really is that simple. This is literally set it and forget it. The next data threat analytics service that I want to talk about is anomaly detection. Now, this service provides a comprehensive approach to ransomware remediation. We use multi-stage machine learning to detect anomalies in your backup data. The stages include observing file creations, deletions, and modifications, and comparing it to historical changes within that specific workload. Now, in addition to that, entropy is also analyzed to determine if a ransomware-like encryption has happened. And if possible, we'll also identify the specific ransomware strain as well. Now, if an attack has occurred, Rubrik automates the assessment of the blast radius to quickly understand what applications and files were impacted and when. That eliminates the intensive manual labor that's often required, such as bringing up a VM copy and manually comparing and scrubbing for changes. And finally, your backup file system has immutability. So since your data is never available in read-write mode, it simply can't be changed or overwritten. Fast and flexible recovery options can be used to revert back to the most recent clean version, whether using instant recovery, live mount, file level recovery, or orchestrated recovery. And that brings me to threat hunting. And now this is a powerful tool that lets you perform custom scans within your backups on demand for specific indicators of compromise. You can identify the point of malware entry so that you know what point in time to recover to avoid reinfection and minimize data loss. Threat hunting is both broad and deep. It allows you to scan multiple workloads and across time. Threat hunting is flexible. It can consume and search for threats via Yara rules, file hashes, and file patterns. These types of threat intelligence are industry standards. Thus, this allows you to leverage threat intelligence from various sources, such as internal sources like your own InfoSec team, third-party intelligence services that could be paid or open source, from industry groups such as ISACs, and even government agencies who issue threat bulletins. Now, much like anomaly detection, threat hunts are done on backups, and thus there's no impact on live production systems. Threat actors remain unaware of the ongoing hunt. And lastly, since Rubrik backups are immutable, you can identify indicators of compromise that attackers have erased from production systems in an attempt to cover their tracks. So threat hunting can shortcut the hunt for the point in time and the place where adversaries may have gained access to your infrastructure, and help to define the clean recovery point so that you're not recovering with the malware still in place. Let's look at a typical ransomware attack and how data threat analytics fits in. Bad actors will establish initial access, followed by a lateral move, persistence, privilege escalation, recon, collecting, and staging. And finally, there's exfiltration and encryption. So anomaly detection pinpoints the impact on the target. You can identify the blast radius so that you know what to recover quickly. Threat monitoring and threat hunting identify when the attackers established access so that you can ensure a safe restore point. So threat monitoring is a passive activity, while threat hunting is more active if there are specific indicators of compromise that you want to hunt for. Now, these are all very powerful when used in conjunction and help you to make sure that your recovery is as fast and safe as possible. So data threat analytics, again, to recap, combines three powerful threat detection engines. With threat monitoring, you can continuously scan for known threats to detect compromise before the damage is done. With anomaly detection, you can detect file system anomalies and even VM anomalies to identify data destruction and the blast radius of an attack. And with threat hunting, incident responders can hunt for IOCs throughout the time series of data. So let's move on to data security posture. So what can you do with data security posture? You can reduce sensitive data exposure and manage exfiltration risk by discovering what types of sensitive data you have and where it lives. And you can also reduce this data exposure risk by identifying who has access to that sensitive data. Again, just like with data threat analytics, because all of this scanning is done on backups, there isn't impact to your production systems. So let's take a look at the services that make up data security posture, starting with sensitive data monitoring. Now, this service automatically discovers and classifies sensitive data, both on premises and in the cloud, including in Microsoft 365. We offer many pre-built analyzers that are aligned to common policies. So for example, analyzers that'll discover PII, PHI, GDPR data, etc. And sensitive data monitoring offers benefits both in peacetime and in an attack scenario. So in the proactive use case, you can determine, is data stored in the right places? It's very common for organizations to discover that they have sensitive data somewhere where they didn't expect it to be. And also, are we complying properly with data regulations? Now, in the reactive use case, in the attack scenario, this is also useful for regulatory compliance and reporting. You can find out whether sensitive data may have been impacted in an attack and notify the appropriate parties. Now, user access helps you reduce the risk of sensitive data exposure by providing intelligent insights into data access permissions. So you can proactively identify which users have access to what data and what type of risk that access poses. This comes in handy when conducting forensic investigations post-incident, since you'll be able to quickly identify which users had access to the impacted data and therefore narrow down the list of potentially compromised credentials. So again, my goal here was to give you all a peek into why your backup system is a key component of cyber resilience, and just a few takeaways here. Backups are often the last line of defense against cyber attacks, and it's really, really important for your backups to be air-gapped and immutable so that they can't be impacted by those bad actors. Backup policies impact recoverability. It's important to prioritize your data assets. Every type of data object is different, and define RPOs and RTOs. Backups contain really valuable security intelligence. For example, the blast radius of an attack, indicators of compromise, a clean restore point, content sensitivity and access permissions, even remediation recommendations. Again, your backups are your own data, and we should be leveraging this data to get the security intelligence that'll help us get back to business as usual as quick as possible. And lastly, both IT and security should have a seat at the table. And I would encourage everyone to involve IT in your tabletops, because there's a lot of information, like I've been saying, within the backups that those teams can provide. Rubrik Security Cloud is composed of a set of capabilities around data protection, data threat analytics, data security posture, and cyber recovery. And I spent a good chunk of time in this presentation talking through the detect and identify pieces here. But there's a lot more that I barely touched on, including orchestrated recovery and different integrations that we have with other security solutions like DLP, SIEM, and SOAR systems. That's everything that I have for you today. I hope that this session was useful. If you'd like to learn more about Rubrik and our product offerings, please get in touch. If you're curious about the state of data security and want to read more of our research, do check out our Hard Truths report at rubrik.com/0-labs. If you'd like to see the product in action, head over to rubrik.com/explore. Once again, thank you for joining me today. Take care.
Take care as well, Vir. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Great to have you on. And I'm sure you're going to have some eager folks checking out the Zero Labs link there. Now, if you are out in the audience and you want a little more information from Rubrik, this is your time to click on in and give your feedback of what you're looking for. The Rubrik solution is, whether it be a data sheet, pricing details, personal demo, want to give it a try, pop that in the response poll and the Rubrik team will follow up after today's EcoCast. Now, that said, Vir does have to take off and we will not have a live Q&A session. Thank you for those who did send in your questions, but do not fret. Any one of you that sent in a question will have it followed up after the EcoCast today, or they will follow up on it after the EcoCast today. Now, if you do want to learn more right away, click into the Handouts tab and you will see a link to Rubrik's Zero Labs website, where you can take a journey to a secure yet uncertain future. It's a really fun, visual, and well-built site and a great way to follow up on the conversation today with Vir. So give that a go. And again, if you haven't already clicked on the other handouts and PDFs in there, you will definitely want to save those links, save those PDFs, and have them so that you can check them out after today's session, because you may not be able to find everything online with an easy Google search like we're so used to. Now, with that, I do have another prize to give away. So today we have, again, $300 Amazon gift cards. Our second prize winner is Megan Bolin from Illinois. Huge congrats to Megan. Hopefully you are here and able to claim this prize. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And don't forget, there is still one more chance to win an Amazon gift card today, plus those best question gift cards for each session. But for now, let's keep things zipping right along, and we will have our fourth and final presenter from today's EcoCast. Wrapping things up in style, it is the Okta team. And from Okta, we have Craig Verzosa, the Senior Solutions Engineer, and Sam Katzen. He's the Group Product Marketing Specialist. So we are excited to have you both here on from Okta. And Sam will be presenting, followed by Craig, who's going to give us a live demo of Okta. So you get to take a look under the hood and see what is working over at Okta in terms of their tooling. So with that, it's great to have you both here. Craig, Sam, I'm going to hand things over to you. Here you go.
Okay, good morning and good afternoon for everyone who's joining us today. My name is Sam Katzen. I will be leading us through the first part of the set. I'm excited to share this content with you. We've been working on for a little while now. We'll be talking today about identity governance and specifically scaling security and compliance in your business. We've got a jam-packed agenda. We'll start with a little bit about business and technology priorities that we are seeing and hearing from customers today before diving into why governance is so important in that context, before discussing some of the challenges we see with governance today and that we get a lot of feedback on. Then we'll talk a little bit about Okta identity governance, and we'll have a chance to actually show you the product. And I'd like to start with just business priorities. And one of the things we are hearing constantly, and we see it all around us, is the increasing importance of profitability. We came out of a period in COVID where there were low interest rates and it was a very high growth mindset. And we've shifted in a pretty significant way towards one that is driven by profitability. Every organization is thinking more and more about unit economics. And I think tied to that is this real focus on productivity. Maybe it's that teams have gotten very big or that technology portfolios have, and organizations are thinking more and more about getting the most out of their workforce and out of their resources. I think tools like artificial intelligence are certainly pushing that conversation forward about how we can become more productive on an ongoing basis. And the last thing I'll talk about from a business priorities perspective, and we hear this a lot, is the need for adaptability for organizations today. I would imagine every one of us reads the news, and it would be a strange occurrence not to see the words volatility associated with the stock market or uncertainty associated with the economy or even the geopolitical environment that we're all encountering. So as a result of that, organizations today have to be more and more adaptable because the world around us is changing so much and so quickly. And I think all of those business priorities, they transfer over to technology priorities. And it makes sense because every technology leader today is thinking about doing more with less. They're in a position where perhaps their tech stacks have become very distributed thanks to COVID and the rise of cloud computing in a much more tangible way, or it's that their workforce itself is fully distributed. and they want to automate as much as they possibly can across that pretty broad and heterogeneous tech stack. The other side effect of that broad and heterogeneous tech stack is the need to modernize their approach to security. After all, when you have workers all over the place and they're accessing resources that are no longer based in your own data center or on-prem in some form or fashion, you really need to have a modern approach to how you think about security. And despite all of that, every one of these organizations that we talk to is making sure that their technology priorities align with their business objectives. They don't want security that's ultimately going to slow the business down. They want to make sure that they're effective at meeting those business priorities and those business goals. Last thing I'll talk about is people priorities, because it's impossible not to see how each of those two first sets of priorities impact the workforce itself. I talked before about having a distributed workforce and having people all over the place. Well, those people aren't just employees, are they? A lot of us also have contractors or business partners that we're working with. And it's critical to have a flexible environment that can cater to each of those users. Similarly, they all have ease of use top of mind as well, because if you have a bunch of different users on a ton of different devices that maybe are managed or unmanaged, and all of them are trying to access a bunch of disparate or distributed resources, you need to make sure that they can do it if they're going to be productive. And that's where ease of use comes in. Now, each of those priorities that I've talked about, governance fits into all of them. And it's really critical to understand exactly what governance is so you can see how critical it will be to your organization, how it will ultimately benefit you. And so let's start with just some background on what is identity governance. And I think that this analogy is a pretty good one to understand how governance works and how you can be thinking about it. And if we think about the whole spectrum of identity challenges or use cases, access management may be the one that you're most familiar with. And it's the idea of just getting in the front door of a building or a resource. You have broad access to that resource. Now, once you're in that building, perhaps there's something that's very privileged that you need to do. In this case, let's think of it as using the freight elevator. Not everyone needs to do it. The use cases for why you might are very, very specific. And so only a subset of a population would ever need to use that. Well, across privileged or broad access, there comes identity governance, which is a much more fine-grained way of looking at what someone can do within a resource. Maybe it's access to the freight elevator. Maybe it's access to the 17th floor. And what governance allows you to do is to not only control who has access to what within that resource, but to be able to say on a continuous basis, should they still be able to do that? Are we monitoring? Are we making sure that we are in compliance in terms of what each of those individuals could do within a building or a resource, as the analogy goes? So if we were to look at this from a market definition standpoint, IGA's purpose is all about managing the complex array of access rights to various resources. That could be applications, that could be groups, that could be privileged resources, and identity repositories within organizations today. So some key capabilities come with IGA: lifecycle management, user provisioning, access requests and approvals, and access recertification. Now, each of those capabilities ladder up to ultimately a need that an organization has. And to be clear, every CISO or CIO needs some form of identity governance. And there's really three main reasons why. And you'd be shocked to hear that a lot of these reasons ladder up directly to those priorities we just talked about. So the first is improving your security posture. With good identity governance, you can follow a principle of least privilege and ultimately one of zero trust as well. So at the forefront, that means having a really good sense of who has access to what resources and whether they should continue to have that access, being able to certify that on an ongoing basis. Also included within that is the automation of onboarding and offboarding processes within your business. In addition to security posture, there's also meeting compliance requirements. And we all have seen some form or fashion of this alphabet soup here, these frameworks, whether it's SOX if you're publicly traded, SOC 2 if you're a service organization, ISO or PCI if it's payment or security related. Each of these frameworks, no matter what they are, has some amount of identity control within it, because every one of them is going to ask, hey, can you tell me who had access to this resource? Can you justify why they had it? And can you provide an audit trail of when it occurred? I mean, all that is critical. And if you can do that on an ongoing basis, you can meet these compliance thresholds, which in some cases is a checkbox, but at the same time can open a ton of doors from a business perspective, new markets, avoiding fines, all of those things. The last thing I'll talk about is driving productivity. And this may be the one that is least associated with identity governance today. But when you get something like lifecycle management right, you can have employees who have birthright access on day one. They're far more efficient and productive to start their journeys with your organization. And at the same time, even if you miss some resource with birthright access, which is always going to happen, if you can provision people access on an ongoing basis through a way that's self-service or the least amount of friction possible while still providing documentation, then you're going to have an organization that's more productive without sacrificing compliance or security. Ultimately, if you get that all right, your IT overhead is going to be significantly lower. All that's tied to identity governance. So if identity governance is so important, why is it so hard? Why are we all on the phone today? Well, the answer is that there's a lot of challenges with the way we've traditionally done identity governance. Here's some numbers for you. Gartner said that 50% of IGA deployments today are in distress. And that means that they're failing to achieve functional, budgetary, or timing commitments. And if you think about that, if you think about the KPIs for how we evaluate any project, if it's failing to meet budgetary, functional, or timing commitments, those are all sort of the big three that you might think about. So what Gartner has said is that the IGA market as a whole is changing. And in the future, they think that 70% by 2025, 70% of IGA deployments are going to be this SaaS converged approach, where you're looking at not just IGA, but also access management and privilege access in the same bundle. Some of the stuff that we hear from customers when they talk about traditional IGA, they say it's got a long time to value, it's expensive to maintain, and that there's low adoption. Now, with all that being said, you might be thinking, well, that's why none of us want to buy traditional IGA solutions. We prefer to do it in-house ourselves with our own processes. And I know that that's a popular approach for a lot of organizations today. And let's just look at a couple of capabilities, access requests and access certifications for some of the downsides to trying to do it all in-house. So if we look at just giving broad access to every application that you have in your organization, I think we recognize that that's not a very good security policy. And it also has the downside of wasting a significant number of dollars on seat licenses that aren't used. You're sort of over provisioning for the sake of simplicity, but you have a security downside and a financial downside to doing that. Now you could say, all right, we'll create an email system and we will take access requests via email, and that'll allow us to avoid over provisioning. Well, you could do that, but the manual processes that are going to result from that are going to be extremely time consuming. And you also have this paper trail that you're not really creating. There's no centralized documentation of any of that. Then you could say, okay, what we'd like to do is move everything over to an ITSM service, and we'll set up help desk tickets for every one of these requests that comes in. And while that's effective in the sense that you've created more of a paper trail, there's still that manual process creation that you have, and you're going to spend a lot of time devoted to something that ultimately is not very strategic. Important, but not ultimately strategic. Let's look at access certifications. And this is a little bit more of a step-by-step journey. You've got these critical systems that you want to certify for compliance reasons. What you probably are doing is downloading the rights or information from, could be Okta, could be Active Directory, could be really any other application or resource that you deem to be critical via CSV files. And that's a pretty manual effort, depending on the number of systems you have. The time can really stack up. And it's also going to be an area where you have a lot of errors because humans are fallible, we'll make mistakes. After you do that, you ultimately have to create a spreadsheet with reviewers and managers approving these sorts of these access certifications via a Jira or email. And if you think about each one of those systems, you might have thousands of users, and those thousands of users may have a ton of different managers, and you have to manually go find all that and plug it in, and ultimately chase down each of those managers to try to get their responses. That's going to take you a ton of time, and your response rates won't be that strong. And even after you do all of that, you still have to go close the loop and manually deprovision those users whose access you've decided to revoke. Now, if you do that, it's going to take you a lot of time. And if you have any mistakes, you could fall out of compliance, costing your organization a ton of time and money. So with those problems all laid out, there's a big opportunity and upside for your organization to get IGA right. But there's a lot of challenges out there. And so that's why we've introduced Okta Identity Governance, because we see this massive opportunity for so many businesses today. And we think that we have a unique approach to it. And that unique approach starts with a very holistic view of identity as a whole. Our mindset isn't that we want to have an IGA solution and an access management solution. We built one workforce identity cloud by unifying access management and governance, much the same way that Gartner said the industry is moving in. We think that there's a ton of different outcomes that are beneficial for an organization. One, you remove identity silos, so you improve your security posture as a whole. Two, you eliminate or you increase the opportunity for automation across that unified system, which is going to make it much easier for IT to be efficient. And three, you give end users one place to go, which ultimately makes them more productive. And so Okta Identity Governance, our solution, has 5 different components to it. There's lifecycle management, there's access requests, there's access certification, there's reporting, and there's workflows. And those 5 capabilities, I'll walk through each of them actually and make it a little bit easier and tangible. And I'll start with lifecycle management. And lifecycle management is all about creating a single source of truth for all of your identities, centralizing them. And core to that is being able to have a universal directory, in our case, that takes in a ton of different identity resources. That can come from HR systems, that could be Workday, that could be something like Bamboo HR, to Active Directories or any other LDAP or even CSV files that you have. So we centralize all of those identities within Okta. We attach attributes to those identities, map them. That allows you to create groups and policies, ultimately enabling you to automate the provisioning and deprovisioning of users. But as we talked about before, we understand that not every user is going to get access to everything they need on day one. They need to be able to use some capability to make access requests. And we made this dead simple through a user interface that you can see here through Slack. There's a chatbot that makes it very, very easy to request access and to approve access where you're already getting work done through Slack or Microsoft Teams. And for IT professionals, you can control who can see and request what through Okta access requests. And there's support for time-based access to reinforce that least privilege. And all of this can be done through a customizable approval workflow builder that Bennett will show you in just a little bit. Now, on the other side of access requests is certifying access and being able to say on an ongoing basis, are we managing and ensuring that the right people have access to the right resources on an ongoing basis? And one of the things I want to call out is what you see on the right is something that is all done through the same unified solution. You're not hopping between different tool sets in order to get the job done with Okta Identity Governance. And you're also able to create recurring campaigns within access certification, which allows you to do those quarterly or monthly, even weekly reviews that you need to do without having to chase down managers or to hop from system to system. And on top of all of that is out-of-the-box reporting. And another big benefit that comes with a unified approach to identity governance and access management is that you don't have disparate reports that you're pulling together. You can query all of Okta to determine who had access to what resources, when that access was granted, why it was granted, and any other audit campaigns that you want to look at. Now, on the right, you see a user interface here, but all this is downloadable via CSV files as well with much more granularity. And the last thing I want to call out, which might in fact be the most important when it comes to our holistic approach to identity, is workflows. Now, workflows is an identity-based logic that connects apps across existing IT stacks. It's a no-code user interface that allows you to create if this, then that functionality. What you see on screen right now is an example of this, of a user being created within Okta, that user being assigned a territory within Salesforce and ultimately added to a Slack channel as a result of that. That automation carries across some pretty complex lifecycle management capabilities, but it also can extend some of the things that you're doing with governance as well. Now, taken as a whole, the Okta Identity Governance Bundle combines access governance, which is the requests, certification, and reporting, with workflows, that broad automation, orchestration, and customization engine, with core lifecycle management. So you can go across the entire kind of spectrum of what you need from Okta and specifically what your identity management needs are, all in the name of scaling your security and ultimately automating a lot more of your compliance challenges. So,
hey everyone. So my name is Craig Brazosa. I'm a senior solution engineer here at Okta, and I work on all things Okta, but have a specialization in governance. I've been with the company for about 2 years now, but I've been in the identity industry for almost 7 years. And in today's demo, I want to show you more about Okta Identity Governance and all of its really vast capabilities, especially when it comes to the governance side of lifecycle management, access requests, access certifications, and entitlements management. And these are important really because it'll help you automate what may be manual tasks today, especially when trying to meet SOX compliance. So let's go ahead and get into it. So to start off, what you'll notice is in the Okta admin panel, there is a new section called Okta Identity Governance, which contains the access certifications and access requests. We'll start with access certifications today. And this is the user access reviews that you may handle in today's day and age with things such as Excel spreadsheets, service desk tickets, and email. And this is pretty standard across the industry. But where everyone's really moving to is more of a centralized and automated version of identity governance. And what we can do instead of having a person be the one to create the spreadsheets, send them out to all the reviewers, and really keep up with all the reviews is to automate that whole process for them. And so what we do here is we create campaigns. These campaigns are recurring scheduled reviews that can go out every quarter, every half year, or maybe even annually. And this can help reduce the time it takes to make a review happen. And so what we can do is we can create a campaign. We'll go ahead and create one for a set of users. And so normally what you'll have is people creating app owner-based campaigns, where the app owner will review access for everyone in your company. But once you move to something that's more centralized, you can actually really take it to a much more sophisticated level, where what you'll want to do is create quarterly access reviews that happen every 3 months. You'll go ahead and do it for all your users or for a specific type. And so we'll go all users for now. And then the access that they may have. And so we'll review all of their access as well. And what's nice here is instead of assigning it to a single user to be reviewing thousands of every the users who are in their application, we can then assign it to their manager. And this manager can now review the access for each of their direct reports. These direct reports are, he'll have a better view into like should or should not this person have access to these set of applications. We can also set a fallback reviewer in case that the reviewer isn't defined in terms of the manager. And then the last step here is what's the remediation step? When access gets revoked or whatnot, what we're able to do is then schedule this campaign and determine if it's revoked, remove that access immediately. And so we have these access reviews, and let me show you now what it looks like. And so in a reviewer's dashboard, they have a new tab called Access Certifications. And when we click into it, we can see any campaign that's assigned to that manager or app owner and all of the pending reviews that they have. So this will be each of the users, the access that needs to be reviewed, and then whether to approve or deny that access. The reviewer can then see additional user details, right? Who the user is, maybe what department they're in, even some things like the last time the users accessed that application, and that's going to all be shown here. And so we can then bulk approve or just approve all of them and then maybe revoke one. And all that information makes it a lot easier to determine who has access to what. So now that we've gone through the access certifications flow, let's show how users can add access for themselves. And so what we have here is my dashboard where I have access to a few applications. But what I want to show is how can I then self-service request access to get more access myself. And normally this can be done with a service desk ticket or emailing your IT team, but let's do it in a much faster, more automated and track flow. So I have a new button here that says Add Apps. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And we can see all the applications that I'm allowed to request access for. Now this will be assigned to me based on really who I am, maybe what department I'm in, location. This gets determined by maybe like Okta Group, for example. But I need access to Office 365. And let me go ahead and click on that. We can then see I can submit this request, and this then goes to the appropriate approver, whether that be the app owner or my manager. That's all determined in the back end. And so let's go into the approval flow. And I have my demo user here, Bruce. So he's the person who is going to be approving, and he gets a notification in his email or whatnot. It can happen through Slack. So for example, you can get the approval notification in Slack and do the approval through there. But in this case, we'll do it through the Okta Access Request app. So he'll click on the app and he'll notice in his request box, there's a new event in the inbox. And it's myself requesting access to this resource of 365 with the task to approve or deny it. We're going to go ahead and approve it. And now that that's been completed and tracked, let's go back to my main user. We'll refresh the page. And I have access to Office 365 and all of its associated applications. So as you can see, it's a pretty simple process, but we're able to then have a user request access, get an approval, and have that entire flow be tracked for compliance purposes. Now, what's really great about this is these certification and request flows can be done for general access to your applications, which means any of the apps that you've integrated today in your Okta environment can easily be added or removed from these flows. So it's a really easy time to value. Now, if you also wanted to go a little deeper, we also have the capability to do fine-grained entitlements. And this is really being able to handle the roles and permissions in each application. So let's go back to my applications. I'm going to take Salesforce as an example. And here in Salesforce, there's a new tab called Governance. As you can see here, this out-of-the-box connector allows me to pull in all of the permission sets, profile, licenses from Salesforce and put them into their own category. right? We can have the profiles that are here, and we can assign these out. Now, they can be requested via an access request, or more importantly, in the join, remove, or leaver flow, we can actually assign any of these birthright entitlements via the first time the user is onboarded, or if they move to a different team. And so this is how we're able to then handle birthright access, but as well as saying if someone joins the sales team, go ahead and give them access to Salesforce, but also give them the sales team access rights once they get into Salesforce. Now, this is all really important because we can integrate it all with workflows to do things like custom notifications, on-demand cert campaigns, or additional onboarding and offboarding flows. So hopefully you can see from this demo that there's a lot of ways that you can really up-level your current processes today, whether they be manual or using disparate service desk tickets, really save your team some time and make things a lot easier. So I do want to thank you for attending this webinar on behalf of myself and Sam.
Thank you. Great to have you both, Sam and Craig. And that was honestly just a fantastic way to wrap up this EcoCast, give some great tech tooling on how to save your time, how to build those workflows, and give some ideas about GRC solutions for everyone out there in the audience. I want to point out that we have got one final poll up for you all. Again, this is just asking what kind of follow-up information you might be interested in from Okta and about the Okta solution. So go plunk in your answers there. And if you want to follow up and learn a little bit more right away, you can click out into the Handouts tab and get the tip sheet. This is a PDF tip sheet, 7 tips to modernize your identity governance program. You can drive productivity, enhance security, and manage complexity. So pop in there, check that out. And as I mentioned, this is the last presenter here already in our EcoCast today. Hopefully you had a lot of fun and the time flew by. And I would suggest in that Handouts tab, grabbing anything and everything you might want to get, because we are going to close things out here in just a couple minutes. And with that, I do have our final prize for you here today. That's right. This is the third and final $300 Amazon gift card. And this is going out to Jason Ferrer from Utah. Huge congrats. And just to recap, these are the 3 lucky winners from today's EcoCast. First off, we had Paul Geromini from Massachusetts. Second, we had Megan Bolin from Illinois. And third, and finally, Jason Ferrer from Utah. Congratulations. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after today's webinar. And again, do not forget, we will also be reaching out about those best questions. So thanks again for throwing in your awesome questions today and being interactive throughout today's webinar. Now, if you did have a great time today and you're curious about sponsoring an upcoming EcoCast, MegaCast, or Summit with Actual Tech, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com and find out a little bit more information. And of course, we'd love to chat with you and get the ball rolling. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank you, and I want to thank our speakers from Informatica, Keeper, Rubrik, and Okta for making this EcoCast possible. As always, it's so great to have you all on today, and it's not always easy to take the time to think ahead, to strategize, to find out what's new and on the cutting edge of tech and how we can manage it and bring it into our ecosystem. So thank you for doing that for yourselves and for your organizations and taking the time to learn a little bit today and see what's out there and see what you might want to start implementing as far as new solutions so that those challenges don't feel so challenging for long. And with that, I hope you've all gotten some great tips and tricks, and maybe you're curious to join an upcoming EcoCast or MegaCast. We actually have a MegaCast tomorrow, creating a data strategy that ignites business innovation. That's with Pure Storage and Nutanix and a couple other awesome speakers sneaking in there too. So if you want to check that out, you can sign up Again, Thursday, April 25th, 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific. And with that, I think that is everything I have for you today. So I hope you have an absolutely magical day. And until next time, take good care.